this an adventure or what? We don't need unexplained phenomena. I hope you guys are enjoying this journey we're taking you on. I know you come expecting to hear about big cats, cryptids, UFOs. We will touch on some of that, but I think it's worth sharing some of this with you, don't you? There's only 2 living souls up here today.
Because I can see it in my mind, I can see it in my head what I saw, but I can't describe.
Our eyes was closed, like a brightish light in my face, and I just felt paralysed.
Someone said there's something out there, so we had a look. It looked like a walnut. That's the only way I can describe it.
It was like it had loads of tiny little windows all over it, and it had lights in those windows, but not a light that illuminates.
Anyway, we were ushered into this lounge. This fella came in and said, whatever you saw was a weather effect.
And everything is deathly silent. There's no sea, there's no wind, there's no night noise, because, you know, there's foxes all over here. There's nothing.
Nothing. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the live stream. Another Sunday. It's soon come round, guys, hasn't it? And great to be spending an hour or two with you guys as well. And as always, thanks for support. A lot of people in already, nearly 200 people in already. So that's absolutely brilliant. And we'll have no shortage of things to talk about, because I'm talking with Philip Mantle, a good friend of mine today, and an absolutely amazing ambassador for ufology. And over the years, he's done some amazing work, produced a lot of books, and helped a lot of people along the way. So I'm really, really looking forward to talking to Philip. He's not been well, so I feel quite honoured that he's said he'll do at least an hour. We'll get an hour out of Philip. If he wants to go longer, he can, but we'll just see where we're at, shall we? We're going to talk about his new book and ufology of it years and how it's shaped Philip, and how it's all changed, probably, or not changed. We'll find out, won't we? Before I pull Philip into the stream, let's just have a look who's online. Well, a few names. We can't do 225, can we? Mel Suter, good to see you, Mel. I hope you're all right. Disabled Welshman, Melvin, Julio. Let's have a look. Mia Girl's in, because I saw her in earlier. So I think Linny might be in. Mrs. Linny, Yoddles, Searching Girl. Gemma, my daughter's doing moderating. Thanks, Gemma. Lee's doing moderating. Thank you, Lee. Andy H, Sue Eckersley, Jan and Andrew, and Banana Joe. That's a good name, that, mate. Christopher Witherspoon. Listen, we might do a few name calls a bit later, but I think we need to be talking with Philip, don't we? That's what we're here for. And remember, guys, I want your questions in capital letters. Direct them at me or Philip, preferably Philip, because it's his stream tonight. We're gonna learn a little bit about the history of ufology, I think, when we talk to Philip Mantle. So I'm really looking forward to it. Here we go. Philip, welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Sinclair. How are you doing?
I'm not too bad, and better for seeing you. It's great. It's been I don't know, probably 18 months, 2 years since we last had you on live stream, is it?
Yeah, probably. Yeah. A couple of years at least, Paul, I think.
Yeah. Well, I know you've not been well over last, I would think, maybe 12 months, but
2 years coming up.
2 years shows what I know, doesn't it? And but in between times, you have written another book, so we're going to talk about a few things in that book. But I'm going to let you kick it off. Where do you want to go? Do you want to talk about the state of ufology at the moment? Let's start with this one. How has ufology changed from when Philip Mantle, as a young man, became involved? Would that be 1970s?
Yeah, 1979, 1980. In the winter of 1978 over into 79, is known in this country as the winter of discontent, because the Labour Party were in power and there was lots of strikes. And so me and a friend of mine, we went to work in West Germany. And I got a little bit of interest in UFOs and the paranormal, Paul, but nothing great. But I didn't speak the lingo out there, so I phoned my mum and said, "Can you just send me some books, Mum?" I didn't specify what kind of books, just books.
Yeah, I get it.
Then this box arrives and it's all full of paperbacks on UFOs. Where the hell she got them from, I don't know. I think on the local market. So after work on an evening, I'd sit there reading these books. And so when I got back home in early April, I had a bit more knowledge about the subject and a bit more interest. And I thought, well, it was starting to get hold of me, Paul.
Yeah.
And then I lived just outside of Leeds at that point, in a little place called Tingley. And my auntie lived round the corner. And Leeds used to publish the Yorkshire Evening Post newspaper on a night. I think it still does. And she brought it round one night, and there was a little advertisement, and it was for the formation of the Yorkshire UFO Society coming up that Sunday. And as you may well remember yourself, Paul, in those days on a Sunday, everything shut.
Yeah.
The buses used to run what's called a Sunday service. I didn't drive at this point. So I caught the bus into Leeds, found this place. It's called Centenary House on North Street in Leeds. Looked like an old school. And I went in, and there's some handmade posters pointing you this way and that way. And I could hear these voices from this room. And in I went, 20, 30 people there. And I saw a load of books for sale. So that, I was quite happy with that. Now, it'd been formed by two brothers, Graham and Mark Birdsall. Graham was the older one. And they put on a presentation, and it was obvious from that they'd been involved for a number of years already. And that was it, Paul. I was hooked. Yeah. I paid, I think it was £2 for my yearly membership. £2. And they used to have a meeting once a month on a Sunday. So I used to go to every meeting, but it was never enough, Paul. I wanted to know more. And we were just fortunate as it spilled over into 1980. We got a lot of reports from an area around the market town of Skipton in the Yorkshire Dales. And these were mainly these strange lights at low level. I'm not talking about lights up in the sky, like aeroplanes. These were down in amongst the heather and the moors and places like that. So I thought to myself, rather naively, Paul, that I'd read a few more books, maybe write a letter or two. Who the hell to? I had no idea, and I'd have all the answers I wanted. But of course, that wasn't the case. So I thought, well, we tried our damnedest to see these things ourselves up in just up past a little village called Carlton, on Carlton Moor. And so I thought, if I can't witness it myself, then the next best thing is to speak to those people who believe they have. And that's what I set out to do. Again, it was only for the short term, Paul. I thought, I'll soon figure this out. No, I mean, I have no qualification from school. I never went to university and anything like that. I'm not some brain box. So it was always a personal thing. I wanted to find out the answers for myself, not for anybody else, just me. And I just got more and more engrossed. And I set about investigating the sightings that came our way, along with Mark and Graham and a handful of others. And how things are different. We made our own little newsletter called the UFOs Journal. And we thought this was fantastic, Paul, but it was made on an old Gestetner, and he used to hand wind this thing, But one of the great things in those days was there was a lot of regional UFO groups.
Yeah.
You could find one or two in most counties throughout the UK.
Were they happy to share information, or did you get it? Was it a bit secular?
It would have been clicky at times, yeah. But most of them were all right because we got our fantastic UFOs Journal that we could send them.
Right.
And I still have a few copies of that. And then, this will make you laugh, we decided we wanted to upgrade it because we got more members now. The place was growing. So the Yorkshire UFO Society's HQ was at Mark Birdsall's flat at Lovell Park Towers in Leeds on the 7th floor.
Right.
That's important when I'm about to tell you. We decided to buy a printing machine.
I'm listening.
And we were going to print our own magazine. And it arrived about the size of a big washing machine. And we prayed that the lifts were working to get it up to the 7th floor. Luckily for us, it was. Put it in Mark's bedroom. And we didn't know how to work this thing. Not got a clue.
No.
So we knew a fella who did, so we brought him in, and we made our own magazine. It was called Quest. We used to hand collate it and, you know, staple it together. And I remember one night we were printing away. There's a knock on the door, and there's a big fella standing there, Paul, and he was not happy. He was from the flat underneath.
All right, so that was
the noise from the printing machine. So the only way we could get round it that night was to convince him we were printing the local church parish magazine.
Yeah.
But then we were stuffing things underneath it to stop the vibration.
To soften it, yeah.
Yeah.
So how has it changed then, Philip? Obviously, we know it's changed because you've described how you went about producing magazine, and then you got the printer. But how has unless I'm cutting you short here, aren't I? I was just wondering how the subject and the shape of the UFO, has that changed since? Because what you were describing on Moore and talking about the lights, it sounds kind of thing that we're observing.
Absolutely. There were some things that didn't change, Paul, like these strange lights. For example, one year we bought a caravan and stuck it on Carlton Moor, and we manned it 24/7 for a week, and we put a couple of lads elsewhere on the moors on a night. And I stayed there the whole week, and we did some local media and asked people to come and visit us, and we put some signposts up and down the moor, and we were averaging about 10 or 12 people a day. And what was clear was that these lights weren't anything new. They'd been seen down the decades, because we got some people who'd lived there a long time and said, I saw this back in 1950 or whatever, you know. So it wasn't a new phenomena at all. And then when you looked a bit wider afield, in other parts of the world, there was the same, if not similar. For example, at the same time in Hessdalen in central Norway, these lights were being seen and photographed. We never saw them. We never got the chance to photograph them, although there is one photograph from the moors. And
Tony Dodd one. Is Tony Dodd?
Tony Dodd took one, yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's the Min Min lights in Australia and the Martha lights in Texas and so
Brown
on.
Mountain lights. There's a lot. Yeah,
exactly. So those things have stayed the same down the decades. However, one of the things I write about in the book, it's called UFO Reflections, by the way. And
we'll carry on talking, Philip, and we'll just put the front cover of the book up for anybody that's interested.
So Tony Dodd himself, I mentioned Tony. Tony was a police sergeant who lived in the area. And him and a colleague one night saw this strange object come over. And yes, it was all bizarre, but one of the curious things that were underneath it, there were these three sort of semicircular balls underneath it, like half footballs, if you like, but underneath this thing. And we had a number of sightings of something very similar, and the common denominator among them was these three lights underneath. So I've talked about them in the book, and we've got some artist impressions and witness statements and things like that. But they were very curious because they weren't like conventional aircraft. They were at low level. They weren't, again, it's not something that's 20 miles in the distance.
Well, this is something that was silent, Philip.
Absolutely. I remember on your introduction here, there was a lady's voice talking, and she said, there wasn't a sound, you couldn't hear the wildlife and things like that. Yes, absolutely silent, Paul. Now, I've been on the moors and seen, aircraft come over en route to Leeds Bradford Airport, usually from Manchester or somewhere like that. And you can see the lights flashing on them. You can hear the engine noise on a still night. And they're at X amount of 1,000 feet.
And they're explainable, aren't they? You know what they are.
But... Well, we knew exactly what they were, but these things were at low level, Paul. Very low level, dangerous levels if it was an aircraft.
Are you not curious, Philip, to see whether this is still happening?
I've been curious for years, Paul. Been curious for years, but there is, as far as I'm aware, I've not been well on and off for a number of years. So trekking around the moors like I used to do, and I'd spend all night there sometimes, Paul.
Yeah.
Is not an option for me. All these regional UFO groups, pretty much, not all of them, but the vast majority of them have gone.
Yeah.
I was part of Bufora for a while as well. That's pretty much gone. I think they've got a handful of members, well, people who work on it, but when I left, we had 1,000 members and with investigators all over the country. So even if they are still being reported there, Paul, there's nobody there to do the legwork.
No. And do you think this current batch then of, we'll say, future researchers are too absorbed in internet and the cross-referencing of everything on the internet to be bothered? I'm not doing them a disservice, but by saying to be bothered to actually go out and stand in the field and try and observe, because it strikes me there's a lot of people come up with us every week. There's different people want to come up and have a look, and it's great to have them alongside of us. They're welcome, but most of them are all our age, not much younger. Do you know what I mean? You don't see many in early 20s, late teens kind of thing, wanting to get involved in it. But there are people obviously that age, but I'm wondering if they're just using internet as a tool rather than going out into the field. Yeah,
well, I've got daughters in their 30s and what have you. I've got a granddaughter at 16, and rather than trekking around Carlton Moor, they've got that thing stuck in front of their face all the time, which is called a mobile phone.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure if it carries on, they'll be born holding one. It'll be an integral part of their anatomy.
It's strange, and I know we're here to talk about UFOs, but I can remember years ago when I was looking at somebody walking, and they're actually talking with like little earbuds on and talking, and I thought they were going mad. You know what I mean? You don't realize, but now it's just common, isn't it? Everybody just walks
absolutely, and it's a fantastic technology. Please don't misunderstand me.
Oh, I use it all the time. But there's a question here, Philip. It probably applies to us both, and we'll spend a second on it, or we won't. Many stories of UFOs being shot down by US government, or it says us or US government. If this happens, if it's really happening, why do they keep coming back?
Well, yeah, because I tell you why we keep getting more sightings, because it's nonsense. It's as simple as that. One of the things about the advent of the internet and related resources is that anybody can say anything and put it out there as a fact.
We've just been saying that, haven't we, before?
Yeah, and it goes round and round in circles, and it's passed from pillar to post. At the end of the day, you probably can't find the source where it originated, and people believe it, and they're saying, "Oh, well, it's and it's not. It's nonsense." And one of the things we have now, of course, is disclosure. Well, disclosure is a bit like the end of the world. How many times has that been predicted, and we're still here?
Yeah, absolutely.
It was not long ago. It was the Mayan calendar. Oh, the Mayan calendar's run out. It's going to be the end of the world. Nah, it's not. Mother Shipton's predictions. It's the end of the world. Nah, it's not. And when I first began, we had a very well-known British author. I'll not mention any names.
Okay.
And I remember him telling us, and he believed this wholeheartedly, Paul. The government's going to tell us. Yeah, it's coming.
Yeah, but they
who the hell's the government for a start off? And then nothing happened, and they were going to do it, but the CIA stopped him, or somebody stopped them, And then I think it was the 80s or the 90s. You had Operation Right to Know, and they were walking around the White House and the Capitol building with their banners and. The government's going to tell us. Now it's the same thing with a different name. They call it disclosure.
And they're just kicking ball further down pitch, aren't they? Because we're not going to find out. Not from them sources anyway, I won't think, are we?
Well, the way I look at it, Paul, I don't think that there's anything there to disclose. We know from our work that when we go to speak to people, it's whatever they've observed has been and gone. So obviously the governments will have some interesting cases, but that will be it. But it don't matter if you work for the government or you're a factory worker like me. By the time you get there, it is gone. It's finished, and you can only draw your own conclusions from that.
And all it's left is an incredible memory etched into somebody's mind, and we've got to trust that, and hope that they've been accurate.
But what you have now is these people, some of them scientists, I've handled, UFO crash material, and I've seen this and I've seen that. Well, great. Good on you, mate. Put it on the table and let us have a look at it then. And I guarantee you now it will not happen. No. So I don't waste my time with it at all. I've got better things to do.
Okay. We've got another question. Are we good for questions, Philip? You're all right with that?
Yeah, of course.
I saw a massive wedge-shaped UFO in Batley in 1994. I was in bed looking up at the sky through the window. It was as big as and blocked out the stars. Very slow-moving, no lights, stealthy, going south, silent, not human. Thank you, Jim. Just pass that on. You're in sort of Philip's neck of the woods here. And
I lived in Batley for a good few years. Certainly, I was there around that time. And I lived on Woodall Drive, which is just off Throstle's Nest, as you're going up through Batley towards Eckmanwyke. The house is still there, but I've not lived there for a few years now. And we didn't get many reports locally, apart from one case that was an abduction account. And we set up this fantastic idea, Paul. We'll have a UFO hotline.
Okay.
So people can ring in. All it was an answer machine at my house. That is it. But the telephone number got out. We got it in the local media and it got passed on. The very first message that was left on it was by a local lady in Birstall, which is just outside of Batley. And she talked about a sighting she'd seen a few years ago when she was a youngster. So I thought, well, she's local. I'll go and speak to her anyway. So off we go. I met an appointment. Off we go. Sat there, said hello to her husband, and he were off. And she's told me about this sighting when she lived at home. And then, completely out of the blue, she said she'd been abducted. And she had these recurring abduction experiences.
How old was she?
About the same age as me.
Okay.
I at this time, I was probably in my 30s,
right?
Late 20s, early 30s. And she was married with a baby. And the description she gave us was very graphic, Paul. And I was totally unprepared for it. She told me on the phone she'd seen these funny lights over Leeds. But these things were ongoing. It wasn't a one-off. And her name was Jane.
Okay.
And she's in the very first book I wrote called Without Consent.
Sorry, Philip, go on.
Yeah, she's in there. And fascinating. And,
was it an horrific type of tale she was telling?
Not at all. Not at all. The basics of it was not far from where she lived, there was a field. These creatures came into the house at night, got her, took her to this field, and in it was this thing on the ground. They took her into that. They showed her around. They gave her some little things to eat. They gave her a drink. And she says there was a kind of bath that seemed to be shaped perfectly for her to fit in. And she was naked.
Mm.
And she described these creatures. And pardon me for saying this, but she said she had the best sex she'd ever had. And I'm sat there, didn't know what to do, Paul, when she comes out with this. I wasn't expecting anything like that.
No, do you think? I know we want to hear more about this, but I just want to ask: when you actually went, do you think that's what she intended to tell you, or do you think?
Absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely. I mean, I spoke to her husband about it. It was called murder. I spoke to him several times, and he said, "I don't know. I've not seen anything." I spoke to her mum and dad. And her mum said, well, she said, I thought I saw something one night. And this made me laugh. And she said, I said to myself, go away, it's our Jane you want. So what I did, I interviewed Jane at length and I transcribed all the interviews, and I was on friendly terms then with the late Bud Hopkins in New York, and I sent the transcripts to Bud, and he'd read them and he'd reply, because there was no email.
No.
And he'd suggest a few questions to ask her. And I would do that. And, the next interview, this would happen on and off. And in the end, these things were ongoing, and she had just come to terms with it. She hadn't been hurt in any way. She said when it first happened, she said, I told my family. And, they just shook their heads.
Disbelief.
Yeah, she says, I then went to the doctors and they gave me some pills. Well, it was a time when if any housewife went to the doctors, they got Valium or something like that. And she went to another doctor and he said, take these pills and you won't have any more problems with this. And she said, I took the pills and and they didn't have any effect. And I think she told the doctor where to get off in no uncertain terms, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely.
So I was a kind of last resort. And she told me she's forever grateful that I just sat down and listened to her, Paul, and didn't ask, didn't interrupt, didn't laugh. And we became friendly. I became friends with her husband, Murdo. But then she said, I've just come to terms with it. And that was it. Yeah, but that's in the first book, and that's in Batley. Well, Birstall, just outside of Batley.
So you might not know this. Is this lady still around? Is she?
She was 2 or 3 years back, because I had a phone call from her.
I'm just curious. And did you ask the question? Is this still ongoing?
I did, and she didn't reply. She didn't answer that question. I think she'd seen me on a TV documentary or something like that, and she got my phone number. And she just said, how you doing, Philip? And I said, I'm not being well and things like that. And she said, I'll call you back. And I've not heard from her since.
Okay. So we're nearly halfway through if we're only doing an hour. I mean, you can go as long as you want, Philip, but if we'll check it on hour. Well, just UFO Reflections. When is it out now, this book? I think it is, isn't it?
Yeah, the book is out now on Amazon. It's paperback, hardback, Kindle and audio book. I apologize now for all the typos in it. They're all mine. I've got hands like meat cleavers, Paul, and they were never meant for a keyboard.
No.
But originally this was going to come out a couple of years ago, and I had it written then, but when I took poorly, I just left it.
Yeah.
And I'm still not 100%, but I thought, well, I'll get it out now while I have the chance, and hopefully people will like it. And it's called UFO Reflections because I'm looking back on some of the things I've been involved in down the years, pre-internet days and internet days. So you can see how things are different.
And there's different things within this book to the other books. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. It's a lot. How it happened, Paul, I was driving home from my daughters one day, and I said to my wife, I'm not going to write any more books. And she said, okay. She said, but what all about all the other stuff you've been involved in down the years? What are you going to do with that? And I thought, she's got a point. It's just sat there doing nothing. So I thought, well, the only way to make it available really is to write it up, put it in a book. And I did. And I call it UFO Reflections because I'm reflecting on the things I've been involved in. Not everything, because I can't remember everything anyway, Paul.
No.
It would be impossible. And there are cases in there that people will never have heard of simply because they've been sat on my computer or in my filing cabinet.
Yeah.
And I hope people find it. Yeah, I hope people find it of interest.
So when you were putting it together, then, Philip, because you've kind of established that you've been involved in it since your mum sent you those books in 1970s, and they sort of put you on that path. When you were looking back, just briefly, I went out with Steve Ashbridge, a great friend of mine, and we did like a little road trip at places we used to go up on Wolds, only a month, 6 weeks ago, and we were talking about some of the things, and obviously I were interested before this date, but I'm stood there and I'm going, bloody hell, it's 2002, Steve, 2004, like over 20, and it has it been like the blink of an eye all this time? Does it? The 1970s seem like yesterday to you?
Yeah, I mean, when I reached my 60th birthday, it suddenly dawned on me that I'd been involved in this subject for 40 years, 2/3 of my life. And here I am 8 years later, still involved. And it has gone exceptionally fast. It's a bit like having children, Paul. You know, no sooner are they born than it's Dad, can I have? Dad, can I have? And then they're getting married.
Absolutely. And they're still saying, Dad, can I have? Dad, can I have? There's another question here. Well, it's from a friend of us both here. So this is Chris Evers, Outer Limits magazine. Hi, Phil, Paul. UFO Reflections is a culmination of over 40 years of research into the subject. I was wondering if there could be a part 2. Well, do you know something, Chris, when Philip just said just then, and there's more, there's things I haven't put on, and I'm thinking, this might not be the last book. And will Hull City best Man United on the 22nd of August?
Well, Hull City will get whooped about 18-0. That's a foregone conclusion. Whether there'll be a part 2, God only knows. I'm back at the hospital in 4 weeks' time, so there are no plans for it. Let's put it that way. Excellent. And if there is, maybe I'll do it with Chris and he can write it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure he'd jump at that, to be honest. Let's have a look. Light Dazzles, Tino's, Inmag, Sue. We've got Gemma, haven't we? We've just done Chris. Jane Louise Harding. It was great to meet up with you again, Jane, last weekend. Really enjoyed it. And Mark and Freddie. Really good. Let's have a look. There's another question here from 40, and another great supporter of Truth Proof. Know this fellow well. I understand one of the characteristics of the Pascagoula beings was the pincer type appendage to one arm. Can Phil tell us any more about that?
Right, not to one arm. It was both. It was both arms.
Okay.
For those who are not aware, Calvin Parker, 18, Charles Hickson finished work in the shipyard one night in Pascagoula, Mississippi. Went fishing on the river. This thing came down. These 3 strange-looking humanoid creatures came out. Their arms were described as being a bit longer than ours. And Calvin described the appendages where our fingers are as either being, claw-like, crab-like, or mitten-like.
Right. And,
the crab-like caught on. It sounds more ominous and more spooky than mitten-like. So... and both gentlemen described them exactly the same. Calvin called the creatures the Big Uglies. Now, they weren't exceptionally tall, they were about 5 feet. And there was no neck, head straight to the shoulders. They're pointing appendages out this side, one out the front, these long arms. The legs were stuck together. The legs never moved. It was like stumps for the feet. And they described their skin, if that's what it was, as being grey in colour, but a bit like elephant skin, all crinkly. And they didn't make a noise or anything like that. And right from day one, they called them robots. Not because they knew they were robots, just the way they moved. It was they didn't breathe.
Did they move? If the legs are sort of together, they just kind of glide.
Yeah, they just, hovered, levitated, glide, call it what you will, over the grass, about 18 inches above it.
Right.
And this is an interesting part. They got hold of Charlie and Calvin. Charlie felt a grip on his arm and they pinched him and it hurt. Just remember that. And then while they were on board this thing, Calvin's put on this transparent table and various things happen. But he said it was his lower clothing and his shoes and his boots were removed, and they stuck something in one of his feet underneath, and it hurt.
And is he immobilized, Philip?
Yeah, the only thing he could move is his eyes. There's a lot more happened, but I started working with Calvin Parker in 2018, and I published his 2 books by him. Now, when we first agreed to do this, I said to him, have you got any photographs, any documents? No, was the answer. They'd all been washed away by Hurricane Katrina. Okay, so I set about trying to find these documents while he was, writing. And I contacted the Centre for UFO Studies, set up by J. Allen Hynek, who was there back in 1973. They sent me a PDF file, Paul. Right in the middle of it is a one-page typewritten letter. It's done on an old typewriter, and it's called Puncture Wounds.
Right. This is his fate.
And it describes Charlie and Calvin being stripped down to their underwear and given the once-over. And it said that Charlie had these marks on his arm, and Calvin had these marks underneath his foot. Bear in mind, both gentlemen had reported these.
Yeah.
Then it mentioned some photographs, but there were no photographs. So I thought, this is fascinating. I asked Calvin, who the hell stripped you down to your underwear? He said it was Dr. James Harder. He was there at the time as well. Now, he wasn't a medical doctor, he was doctor of engineering. And then about 18 months later, the same guy at the Centre for UFO Studies sent me an email. And I said, Philip, I've been rooting through some old files today and I come across these. And I thought, oh, you'll already have them, but I'll send them just in case. And hey, presto, it's those photographs that go with that document. And you see these minor scratches on Charlie Hickson's arm and on Calvin's foot. And they are minor. You know, so you have witness testimony. You have somebody who sees them at the time and writes about it, and then you have the photograph of these minor injuries. And I found that fascinating. We have a physical component to their experience that night, Paul.
Absolutely. What year were Pascagoula?
1973.
73. And to think, you know, because I know, like you just said, you worked with, and you did. I know you put quite a lot of time in with Calvin Parker. But from 1973, it had a profound effect on him, didn't it?
Yes, it did. Yeah. Well, he was terrified. And after the incident, both Charlie and Calvin sat on the pier talking. And Calvin was getting married the following month.
Yeah.
And he said, there's no way my future father-in-law will let me marry, you know, his daughter if this comes out. So they agreed at that point not to tell anybody. So they're driving home, and it was Charlie, who was 42, Calvin was 18, who had a change of heart. He said, we got to tell somebody, Calvin, because what if they come back and do this to somebody else? What if it's an invasion? Charlie had been in the military and fought in Korea.
Yeah.
So Calvin agreed up to a point. He said, I'll tell him I saw this thing. I'll tell him the creatures came out of it, but that is it. At that point, I'm going to say I passed out. I'm not going to tell him anything else. So Charlie agreed. He said, well, I'll tell him what happened to me on board this thing. And within weeks, Calvin was in hospital with a nervous complaint. He told me about it. It sounded to me like a breakdown, but he was always adamant it wasn't. It was just a nervous complaint. And it affected him for the rest of his life, Paul. Yeah. You know.
But do you think by becoming involved with you, because you found more witnesses, you found more information than I think anybody had ever unearthed, between you and, we've got to give Dr. Irina Scott some credit here, haven't we?
Absolutely.
Because, you know, we had a doubt she'd put and probably still is putting a lot of effort into that. But do you think, even though it terrified him, do you think he will come into terms with it and realised how important it was to everybody?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things we also found, because Calvin went under hypnosis, we found out that he went under hypnosis with the late Bud Hopkins back in 1993, and I managed to get a copy of the tape.
Did you get them tapes? Wow.
Yeah, and I had it digitized. So I sent Calvin a copy, which he transferred onto a CD. And now on this under hypnosis, Calvin talks about a couple of things that happened to him as a young fella as well. Plus another incident 20 years after their encounter in 1973. And he wouldn't listen to it for a long time, Paul. He would not listen to it. Bear in mind, he married that girl, Waynette, and they were still married. And what he did one night, he plucked up the courage. He got Waynette to sit out on the porch with him, and he got the CD player, and he put it on and said, because he'd never told her the full story either, even
No.
all those years later. And he said, listen to this. And he said it scared the bejesus out of him, but it kind of purged him, if you like. And he said, I wish I'd put things on the record earlier than I did, Philip. I said, well, you've done it now. He just wanted his story on the record, and that was it. He was quite happy to leave it there. And when we found all this other information and all these other witnesses, he was just shaking his head. He felt vindicated because they laughed at him. They laughed at him.
Yeah. I'm not telling you out that you haven't done and out that you don't do, but that's what I try to do all the time, you know. If somebody comes to me, Philip, and they seem genuine and sincere about what they've seen, I go over and above looking for other information to pack around what, not fabricated, actual look for reports and just build up a picture that shows that there's strange things happening around that time period or
absolutely
around that location. And I feel that is giving the witness lots and lots of respect and which they deserve and a lot more credibility than just being alone stood there saying they've seen and experienced this.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, that's a good thing about today's technology, Paul, is that we can do this in the blink of an eye. We can search for things and pass stories on and request for information, whereas way back when I first started, it was impossible. Certainly when Calvin had his encounter, I spoke to one gentleman. I mean, they're on the river. It's not an out-of-the-way place, Paul. There's two bridges went over the river. There's commercial and industrial dwellings behind them. The other side of the river, there's shipbuilding going on. And one of the blokes we spoke to, God rest him, he's no longer with us, was Mr. Lewis Lee. And he was a crane operator in the shipyard that night. He said, I got into my cab, Philip, and he said, my cab's about 10 or 12 feet off the ground. And I could see this thing out over the river, not up in the sky, out over the river, this bluey white thing. And said, you could almost see through it in the middle. It was almost transparent. And he watched it for some minutes, Paul. And he says, it was only my colleague down below who shouted. And I had to look and see what I was doing with the crane. And when I looked back, it had gone. So I spoke to Mr. Lee, lovely fella. And I said, well, did you report it to anybody? He says, Philip, this is 1973. There are no Ghostbusters to report it to. He said, I told my family. And I've told my grandchildren since, but that is it.
Yeah.
And we only found him quite by chance, Paul. Calvin was doing a book signing in the town, and Mr. Lee went and bought a book. And as he's walking away, he says, oh, I saw that thing that night. And he was gone.
Yeah.
Fortunate for us, somebody was taking photos. We had his, we had a picture of him. I put that out on this marvelous technology. And somebody at the local library says, I know him. I'll ask him if he'll speak to you, and he did.
It's brilliant, isn't it?
And that was Mr. Lee. He's passed away since then. But
that's reminded me. If you're listening, there's a lady I've got to speak to in Driffield who wants to tell me about something that she's seen, and I promised I'd ring her last week, and I ain't got round to it. If you are watching by chance, I will ring you this week. I'll make great efforts to do that. And out this morning, Philip, and a guy came up to me. Well, I went to a car boat sale, to be honest with you, at Caton. And a guy came up to me and said, Paul Sinclair. I said, yeah. He says, Hummonby. I've got some information for you about Hummonby, the Hummonby incident. Not pertaining to that warehouse, but he says, around the time that they saw it, I saw something really significant. So I've got that guy's number. We exchanged numbers, so I'll be talking to him next week. We'll see if we can find a little bit more out about Hummonby. There's a question here.
Let me tell you this before we take any more questions. I live in Pontefract in West Yorkshire. It's got a famous haunted house here. It's called East Drive.
Okay.
And they go and do ghost watches there, and they spend the night there at it and so on. There's a black monk supposedly seen there. Not last December, the December before, I was in hospital for 10 days. So I'm on this little ward. there's 6 or 7 of us on the ward, Paul. And in the opposite corner was an old boy called Bill, 100 years old.
Right.
Marvellous old boy, bright as a bobbin, but he just couldn't walk. But we talked about old football matches and all this kind of thing. And he told me about his war exploits, and I said, well, where do you live? He said, oh, I'm in Pontefract. Oh, I am there. And he says, I used to live at that ghost house. I said, did you? He says, me and my wife were the first ever residents of it. And it was a council house.
Yeah.
And he said, it was brand new. So I wallpapered it. And he said, when I got up next morning, all wallpaper's on the floor. And he said, I know how to wallpaper, Philip. And then after the war, he got a job in the fire brigade. So he said, I was off to work, we did 12-hour shifts. And I'd come home and my wife would say, where have you moved so-and-so? And he said, I can't have moved it. I've been at work all day. He said, we were only in the property 8 days. And I came home at the weekend and my wife says, we're moving tomorrow. She'd arranged the house move and the lot and they were gone.
Wow.
And that was just in hospital, Paul. So it doesn't surprise me that somebody recognises you on a car boot sale and says, I've got some info for you.
But it's fascinating, even more interesting, talking about East Drive. I actually thought when you were telling us this, I really did. I thought you were going to say you lived in it and nothing ever happened. It's all a load of rubbish, but it was opposite. And it's fascinating, isn't it, that a new property, I'm not really into ghosts, but I don't know anybody that is. But a new property, and there's some. Do you think? I tend to believe that must be something about the ground that it's built on.
More than likely, it's it's linked to the environment in some respect. That's my opinion. But a similar thing happened. We talked about it before. One of the cases I've got in the book is from 1922.
Oh yeah, we're going to ask you about this. Yeah,
and it's
encounter.
Yeah, it's out near Manchester. It's got a funny name of the little village where they lived, so I'll not try and pronounce it because I'll get it wrong. And what happened, Paul, was I got an email out of the blue from a gentleman. And he said, I've seen you on such and such a documentary. I don't know which one. And he said, my wife, her father, was a mining engineer all his life. Or grandfather, I think it was. And he wrote his own memoirs. They're not extensive. And he said they're in 2 parts. One is about him being a mining engineer. The other is about his life in general. He says the mining engineering bit is the most boring thing you've ever read. And he's just printed a few copies out to give to the family. He's now gone, of course. He says, but there's one chapter in it I think you should read. Anyway, I agreed. This chap came and saw me, gave me a copy of it. And the largest chapter in the whole of these memoirs is one called The Encounter.
All right.
And he was a young lad, I think he's about 8 years old. And in those days, pretty much like when I was a kid, kids went out and played. No supervision. Where you going? I'm going so-and-so. All right, come back for your tea. And off him and a mate they were going to this park, and en route, they came across this thing on the ground, this large cigar-shaped thing. They approached it, door opened. These beings came out. They looked kind of oriental with their clothing, and they had a turban. And they showed them around this thing, and they spoke to them. And I'm cutting it very short.
Nice. Just take as much time as you want for it.
And off they went. Now, had this fella not have seen me on this TV documentary, Paul, we would probably never have got to know about this event because it was printed out in one of 10 sets of memoirs by this gentleman who was long since gone, so you couldn't question him about it. He never told them about it while he was alive.
No.
So that's another way of uncovering materials.
Yeah.
Is when somebody said, oh, I saw you, or you were in the newspaper, or you were on the radio, or what? Saw you on YouTube. I've got this. I saw this, as well.
Do you still, I'm sure you do. I think everybody in chat, look at it. We've got 480 people here listening to Philip Mantle. How good is that?
That's
Thanks, guys.
great. Thank you very much.
And we'll do a few questions because I don't know how you're fixed for time, Philip.
I'm
But
okay.
do you still get a buzz when you get a new report? If it's aimed at Philip Mantle and it's from your area and your theme, should we say, you still get that buzz?
Absolutely. I mean, we talked about Pascagoula. We got a couple of new witnesses to that in recent weeks, and my partner, Dr. Ariana Scott in Ohio, has already interviewed one of those, and she's written it up. I have that stored away. Another one's not been in the best of health, so she's waiting to interview her. So the buzz is still there. I get, when I turn my PC on or my laptop, I even still get the occasional letter.
Yeah.
Paul. The old-fashioned way of doing things.
I received a letter the other week, and I'm going to read it out, not tonight, but next Sunday. A lovely letter from a lady called Denise from Doncaster, funnily enough, who got something to share with us. So I'll be sharing it with you guys.
So and it piques my curiosity still. The only thing that bothers me that I don't get excited about is film and photographs. Most of the film that comes my way is filmed on a mobile phone, and it could be any damn thing. It's very poor quality. I get a few photographs sent. The last one was of disco lights in Wakefield. They're having an outdoor disco, and the lights are shining on the clouds. They were harmless. It genuinely puzzled the individual who sent them, and he accepted my explanation. The reason I know what it was because we have them here in Pontefract.
Yeah,
and I've seen them driving up the motorway, and they do look bizarre on the clouds.
Yeah,
but I knew what they were.
Yeah, we get them. If there's a circus at Lebberston, and they'll fire lights around, and if you're looking on a cloudy night, if you didn't know, you think, "Good God, we've been visited."
Yeah.
We've got a question here, Philip. Mark Leaper. Let's have a look. Paul and Philip, what's your opinion on what really happened in the Sheffield UFO incident, 1997? I do not believe Dr. David Clarke.
Well, David's a long-standing friend of mine and colleague. I've known him a long, long time. I mean, David became involved in this subject when he was about 15, if not before. He's a highly intelligent fella, extremely skeptical. I admit that. He's got a degree in archaeology. He's been a professional journalist. He's been a teacher at Hallam University, teaching journalism and media law. Has a PhD in folklore, and is an associate professor. And in fact, he's just finished working at the Hallam University in Sheffield after, I think, 20 odd years being there. So I found, this is just my experience. I don't know an awful lot about that particular incident. I know a little bit, but I found that I trust David's judgment because I've been on investigations with him, and he's not frightened of saying I've no explanation for this. I mean, he's investigated some weird and wonderful things. The most recent of which that we're aware of is the photographs from Calvine in Scotland. And that's a long story, but David has put his reputation on the line and said this photograph is the genuine article. It is real. That thing is there in the landscape. What the hell it is, I don't know. It might be a military tech, but he's not a debunker, David. He's skeptical.
Yeah.
So I would trust David's judgment, and if that gentleman don't believe him, well, that's fair enough.
But I don't mind people that say I don't believe. It's when they're abusive, and Mark's okay, and he's all as fair. His thoughts on things. I must say that, as you know, I met up with David Clarke a few weeks ago, and I had a great afternoon with him. I'll be honest with you, and I'm looking forward to meeting up with him again. And yeah, he's skeptical, but he's not just a believer and at all costs I believe anything kind of guy. You get that with him, but there's nothing wrong. We should be inquiring for every avenue to find out what these things are, and not everything is like what we term as a truly anomalous object, is it? And it's good that we've got people as inquiring as David.
Well, let's remember, David was the one that was largely responsible for persuading the Ministry of Defence to release their UFO files into the public domain at the National Archives. And when each batch was released at the National Archives, they brought David down as the curator of them. And he used the law, the Freedom of Information Act, over a number of years to persuade them to do it. So that's not the work of a debunker. That's a guy saying, you've got so much information, we need to see it. Not disclosure. You're saying it's worthless to you. You're not interested in it. Make it public then. And they did,
Yeah, absolutely. So with another one here. Well, it's not really a question. Tell me what Wolflands 2 is in hot production. All I can say, David, is we are working on a Wolflands 2. I'd probably same as Philip and probably same as a lot of you people in chat. There's not enough hours in day, to be honest with you, but we are working on it. Likewise, that's myself and Les, and likewise, I'm working on one with Chris Turner. But it's not out of the window. And while I'm there, or while you're there with this question, Wolflands is available on Amazon Prime, and you can watch it there, or you can buy the DVD. And if I sell one today, I'm not asking you to buy one, but if I sell one today, it'll be in post tomorrow morning. And same with the books. Amazon Prime, Amazon for Kindle version, or truthproof.uk if you want to buy the books. And you can also get them on eBay, and you can, just same as the DVD. If a book sale comes in, it's usually in post the next day, unless it's weekend. And that's where we are with books, guys. And your books are all available where? You've said it once, but give us another one, Philip.
Yeah, the UFO Reflections and all the others are all on Amazon. Hardback, paperback, Kindle, and audiobook as well. We have used a bit of AI on the audiobook just to speed things up a bit. So, but it's there. And it was a wagon driver who contacted me some years back, Paul, and he said, have you thought about doing audiobooks? So when I'm on the road and I'm going to sleep at night, I listen to them in my cab. Yeah. So I thought, well, I'd never thought of that. So I looked into it, and hey, presto.
The audiobooks arrive. Excellent. I see Clifftop Pete's in. We've got Tony Worrell in, Martin James. Are we still okay we're up to hour now, Philip? What do you want to do?
No, you're okay. I've just got to take some medication. So...
You do that then, and I'll have a little ramble on. I'll have a look at what questions we've got, mate. And that was Dave K who asked about. We might not have any. So Andy Ross, who was a great friend at Channel. I always look forward to spending time with Andrew and Al Carter. Let's have a look. Andy Ross. Who, in your opinion, is making a difference in the subject of ufology for the good of ufology?
That's a good question. I'd like to think me and Paul are.
We're trying.
But, yeah, you don't usually hear of them. There's a lot of unsung heroes. My colleague, Dr. Irina Scott, out in the States, has done a sterling job. Absolutely sterling job. I mean, you have to remember, she worked for the Defence Intelligence Agency at one point. Her husband was at Area 51. He worked at Nellis Air Force Base. And I'll give you, this made me laugh, Paul. I said to Irina, give me your CV so I can use it. Well, it came, Paul. It was like half a page long. Mine was about 4 lines. And Irina's is just so long. I said, we might have to edit that down a bit, Irina. So there's a lot of people who you don't hear about. I mean, I've been reading about a chap today. I've never heard of him. But he died, and he'd accumulated this huge archive of material. And this gentleman had bought it as out of his estate and rescued it. And you'd never heard of him. No. And so there's people like that who do it for their own interest, and they'll pass that information on to people who want to go public. For me, down the years, and I dare say very few people have heard him, was a gentleman called Hilary Evans, died a lot of years ago. Him and his wife used to run the Mary Evans Picture Library. I found Hilary one of the most intelligent men I ever met. Fascinating fellow to speak with. I was fortunate, I think, as well, to get on friendly terms with Bud Hopkins. Bud came to my house, stayed with me, lectured at one of my conferences. I met him in America. I met him in France. I met him here, there, and everywhere. Didn't agree with everything he had to say, But I remember Hilary Evans saying, "You must read this book, Philip. It's Missing Time by Bud Hopkins." It was his first book.
I've got the book.
I have. I've read it. It's one of the few books I've read more than once. And Hilary actually got me a copy because you couldn't order it anywhere, and I paid him for it. So it's people like that. I've met Jack Valley a number of times. So they had an influence on me.
But
who's around today that has an influence on me? I'd say nobody.
No. Well, I think there's some amazing people that, like you've just said, Philip, who just they're not interested in. Would you call it the limelight? They're not interested in any of that. They're just dedicated to the cause and wanting to find answers a lot of time for what they've seen and experienced themselves. Do you know what I mean? But look, we've got all these people in chat tonight, and I bet you there's some amazing stories, probably some from your neck of woods, Philip, or where I am. Are we still okay for time?
Yeah.
Oh, I've got a question here, which I'm going to put up now. And this guy, we're on early doors, so we'll give Bob Sykes a plug. Watch me read question. Not very good, but it will be. Hi, Philip. 30 years ago, I recall you coming over and interviewing me for a book. I was just wondering if my story made the finished product, and B, what's your opinion on future disclosure? I hadn't read that, Philip, but I'd have still put it up anyway. But sometimes I get names popping up and I think, oh, good God, what was this one about, you know?
God knows. Only this gentleman knows. 30 years ago. I've no idea. I've got to be honest. I can't recollect. I don't know the gentleman's name.
Well, Bob were in early doors, so I'm tipping he's interested, and it's all good intent. So we might find out further down questions. Okay, then, mate. And Nigel Sheffield, thank you. That's appreciated. Philip, let's have a look. Philip, are you familiar with the Night of the Triangles, the famous mass UFO sighting that occurred in Swansea, Wales, January 19th, 1983?
I've heard about it, yes. I'd be a liar if I said I had a lot of information about it. What is interesting about the triangular sightings is, again, if you take a broader view, Paul, in the early 80s, there was a lot of triangular sightings in upstate New York, and they were published in a book called Night Siege, and it was Dr. Hynek's last investigation. There was some poor quality video taken and photographs, but it was a boomerang triangle shape.
Yeah.
This went on for quite a while. As they diminished, Paul, in the mid 1980s, we had them here in the north of England. So we had them in Yorkshire, Derbyshire, those kind of areas, and a lot of them. And we got a lot of reports. I remember David Clark, we mentioned earlier, going to speak to some police officers who'd seen one fly over the police station.
Yeah.
For example. As they, again, dissipated in the late 1980s, we then had the triangles appear in Belgium in 1989 and 1990, of which some of were cockpit radar was released by the Belgian Air Force. And of course, we have the diamond-shaped, triangular-shaped thing photographed at Calvine. So, whilst I'm not familiar with a great deal of information on that particular incident, it doesn't surprise me because these triangular cases have been going on for almost 10 years, but not in one area. And it's only when you somebody like me who reads a lot of books or communicates with a lot of people, or at times I was editor of a magazine, so people wrote things for me, that you find out these things.
And you realise it's moving to another area, becomes highlighted, another hotspot.
Absolutely.
Did you draw any conclusions as to what you thought they were? And we know the triangles, by the way, people. I'm not that dumb, but what I'm meaning is, do you think that it's some unknown other, or do you think it's military tech?
Well, there's the Condign report here in the UK. The Condign report was a study sanctioned by the Ministry of Defence, and it was put together by a chap called Dr. Ron Haddow. And when it was released, again, David Clark got them to release a copy under the Freedom of Information Act because it was originally classified. There were a couple of sections that were redacted. So you had no idea what they were on about. Anyway, just recently, David got them to provide a copy that was unredacted. And they're talking about these triangles as being secret military vehicles.
Right.
You know, we had the rumor of the Aurora and things like that. So nothing would surprise me in that respect, Paul. And but they are. What interests me is if we look at UFO research from when it began in 1947, and then when you see where it is now, things have evolved down the decades. Somebody asked me once, where have all the Space Brothers gone?
Yeah.
Because they were around in the 1950s, of course, Adamski and co. The first abduction account to go public was in the 60s, Betty and Barney Hill. And now it's all flaming Tic Tacs.
Yeah.
Because that's the current flavour of the month. But what it does, it shows you that, you know, our perception of the phenomenon has stayed the same, but it's just our perception and our culture has changed. So we perceive it differently, in my humble opinion.
Yeah, I'll go with that. But we can't. Can we perceive a Tic Tac, the shape UFO, and then we look at the 1950s, 60s, and these little flying saucers with a little glass dome on top? We can't see them wrong, can we? They're different.
We're not seeing them wrong. We're perceiving it. Perception's entirely different, Paul. You know, and we do see things incorrectly. You and me can be standing at the roadside and see a double-decker bus go by. We both agree it's a double-decker bus. And I'll say to you, how many people did you see at the windows? You might say 10. Oh, well, I saw 12. Who's right?
I get it. Yeah, I get it. I still, in my opinion, I don't think people could mistake the Tic Tac for.
It's not a mistake. For me, whatever the UFO phenomenon is, has been with us since, you know, we climbed out of the trees. And we perceive it with our technology and our culture of the day. Our culture of today, when it comes to UFOs, is the Tic Tacs. It was the triangles in the 1990s. Everybody was seeing. So it's if you take the shape out of it, Paul, and just pick the bones out of it, it remains the same.
It remains the same, but the shape changes.
Yes, and we perceive it differently. Probably, in all likelihood, the shape doesn't change. It is the way human perception works, and we just see it different. There's also a thing that nobody mentions in ufology. It's called confabulation. What confabulation is? We all have information going into our senses all the time. We all
process it differently.
And there are occasions when we may not even know that this information has gone in. It's coming via the TV or in a book, and it goes round in the brain and it comes out at some point as real. And you perceive it in your brain as being real. That really happened to me, or I really saw that. And you didn't. You really didn't. And I'll give you an example. I don't know if this is the right way to do it, but back in late Victorian times, over in Halifax in West Yorkshire, the local newspaper was not doing great. And they ran a story about the Halifax slasher. Apparently there's a bloke would creep up behind a woman, just snip a lock of her hair off and run away. Didn't hurt her, you know, didn't try and molest her or anything. Snipped a bit off and ran. So then you had other people writing to the newspaper and said, well, that happened to me. Well, that happened to my wife. And of course it can't have done because the newspaper actually made it up.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
So confabulation was probably at work there. And those people really believed it. Yeah.
Excellent. Good example. I don't think this is so much a question. Just realised I have some footage on UFO I put on DVD. Are you interested, Paul? I was videoing, just appeared out in the air. Yeah, very, very interested, mate. Yeah. Email me or give us a call. My contact information is on truthproof.uk, and we can have a natter about it, mate. Thank you. Let's see if there's any more questions. Are we still okay for time, Philip?
Yep, give it another 20 minutes and I'll have to call it a day.
Yeah, that's all good for me and good for these guys. Let's have a look. Evening, Paul and Philip. Do you think why do you think the wildlife goes quiet during an event?
Yeah, it's a fascinating thing, and it's not scientific, but it's sometimes a rule of thumb that you think, we might be onto the genuine article here, whatever that may be. I know an ex-colleague of mine, Jenny Randalls, was one of the first to make this popular, to make it known. She called it the Oz factor, after the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
And I've spoken to people about it, and they said, the wildlife goes quiet. Not just the wildlife, though. The sound of any nearby traffic, the wind. So it's almost like you're in a bubble. You're in a dome, and you're protected from it. But it happens not just in UFO encounters, Paul. It happens in paranormal encounters as well.
Yeah.
So it's not just restricted to that particular subject matter. What, to me, it seems it's something we do as people.
So some reaction to it from.
Yeah, it's a mechanism we have, and it's never been studied properly or anything like that. So we'll call it the Oz factor, like Jenny did, for want of a better phrase. But it is truly fascinating. And
it really is, and you're probably closer to it with that analogy because, and I'll use a guy from Wolflands as an example, Gaz, who went up onto Scalby Mills. I think you'll probably know where that is, near Scarborough, to do a bit of aurora watching. And he said, I'm there, I've got my camera set up, I've got my flask, got my sandwiches, sat there in the darkness on my own. He hears a noise in the brush to his left. And then the first thing he notices, we'll not go into all story, but the first thing he notices that suddenly he can't hear the sea, and he's actually on edge at cliffs, he could hear it, can't hear the seagulls, because for anybody that don't know, they're not owls, but they fly about all night. Seagulls I don't know how they do it. They dodge all phone lines and everything around here. They're brilliant. But everything had gone silent. Now we know that however powerful the UFO is, or the influence of it, it can't stop the sea. It's not King Canute, and he couldn't do it, could he? So what I'm meaning is, it is something that's either we're exhibiting to the extreme fear that's approaching, or extreme changed environment, or it's targeting the individual. Do you think?
I think it's something that's internal to us. It's a mechanism we have, maybe I don't know, a protection. I mean, we have sleep paralysis every night. It's a thing that stops us falling out of bed, Paul, because we used to live in the trees, and monkeys still live in the trees. They don't fall out of the tree when they go to sleep.
No,
we don't fall out of bed when we go to sleep. So it's an internal mechanism we have that prevents us doing that. And in all likelihood, this is something similar, because it doesn't happen all the time. It's not something that everybody has. So, but we'll probably never know. We'll just discuss it and come up with ideas.
Yeah, but we might never know. I agree. We've got another question here. It might be just a short one, this, I don't know. Philip, do you think aliens walk among us?
No. And the reason why is I'm not convinced that the UFO phenomenon is necessarily aliens from another world. I'm not ruling it out completely, Paul.
No.
My humble opinion is that the UFO phenomenon is plural. It's not just one thing, and there are many aspects to it, and the possibility that aliens are visiting us is one of them. But if I had a list of the top 10 theories, that will probably be down at the bottom. We have to remember that the extraterrestrial hypothesis is just that. It is just a hypothesis. I'd love to be wrong, of course. I think even all the skeptics and debunkers would love to be wrong. Because it would be the most historical, fantastic thing ever to happen to mankind, to find out that we were not alone. What's confirmed, well, not confirmed it, but has led me to lean towards that more in recent years, of I think over the last 10, 20 years, we've found out more about the universe as a whole. We now know that the visible universe is much bigger than we first imagined, Paul. It's 48 billion light years across. It has an estimated 2 trillion galaxies. And I don't know the next word up for how many planets and stars there are within all those 2 trillion galaxies.
And that's what we know now. I mean, can you imagine another 20, 30 years? Yeah,
that's the visible universe. So we know it's much bigger. Linear space travel going from here to be in a spacecraft is, you know, and what's the nearest star? 3, 4 light years away.
Mm.
Then we talk about interdimensional travel and all this kind of stuff. What you found is with people who believe we're being visited by beings is that they've also changed the goalposts as well. Not all of them, but some of them. And they've realised it's a bit like the early Space Brothers. Oh, the aliens live on the dark side of the moon. Well, we went there and they don't. Oh, well, they live on Venus. Well, it rains sulfuric acid there. No, they don't. Well, they live on Neptune. Well, no, they don't, because it's a gas giant. Or they live in Zeta Reticuli. So they kept moving the goalposts. Mm. And it's similar with people who believe that we're being visited. They're now saying, oh, well, maybe it's humans from the future. It's not aliens after all, because space traveling those distances, probably impossible. Just think about it though, Paul. Just think about that for a second. Let's say mankind invents into interstellar travel tomorrow. Where the hell do you go? How would we know to go to a particular star system
that might contain life?
That might have life.
Yeah.
So reverse that. Let's assume that there is intelligent life out there. How the hell would it know to find us? Some said, well, it was the atomic bombs in 1947. You couldn't hear those, right? We couldn't detect them at the other side of the earth. Never mind, light years away.
Mm. I'm not saying you're wrong, Philip, but we don't know what these other intelligences.
I'd love to be wrong, Paul. I mean,
so my next question then to that question is, well, what do you think they are? If these people are claiming to have seen things, because they can't all be having some kind of psychotic episode.
Oh no, I don't believe in psychotic episodes or anything that, Paul. Like I said, my first book is called Without Consent. There's an updated version of it available, and it came out in 1994. So it was a couple of years in the preparation. And I wrote it with a journalist colleague of mine called Carl Negatus. Sadly, Carl's no longer with us. And I literally travelled up and down the country interviewing people who had had these encounters. I went to Scotland, I went to Wales, I went to the South Coast. The only place I didn't go was Ireland, and that's simply because I couldn't find anybody to talk to there. Had I found someone, I would have gone.
Yeah.
And I didn't find any of them psychotic, Paul.
No.
I found different people from different walks of life, different educational backgrounds, etc., who were just, to say they were puzzled by what had happened to them is an understatement. But and I asked them this very question as well, Paul. These people have the experience, not me. What do you think happened to you? Some said definitely aliens from another world. There were a few more said, I think it was some kind of spiritual experience. Others said, I don't know. That's why we contacted you, Philip. Yeah. There's one young lad, it features him Without Consent, and he thought it was the Russians.
Right.
He didn't really believe that, Paul, but it was his way of dealing with it. In those days, the Russians were the bad guys. This had scared the living daylights out of him, so it must be them.
Russians. Yeah,
we'll blame them. So even the people themselves don't know, Paul.
Well, I'm a prime example. I've written Night People, and I say in Night People, I haven't got a clue what it was as a child that I saw, and I to this day I still don't know what they were. But I think, and if the first person that comes with some kind of proof, we'll all be kind of jumping up and down. But they've not come out so far, have they? Anything conclusive?
No, they haven't. But it's the most romantic idea. I mean, in the book UFO Reflections, we have another new witness, allegedly, to the Roswell incident.
I've got that question here. I didn't know we were going to get to that. Well, that's good. Yeah, fire away.
And how it came about, Paul, is about 10 years ago now. I was contacted by a film company in America. They made films for TV, but based on real life events. And one of their clients had been a female private investigator, and she died. And she had 2 grown-up children. They were going through her belongings. In her filing cabinet was a folder, and it just said Roswell on it. That's all it said. In that folder was a VHS tape and some paperwork. They put the VHS tape in, and it's this old boy. It's an informal interview. He's in his own house, and they're following him round. He's called Charles Forgus, ex-deputy Charles Forgus. He tells the story that in 1947, they weren't stationed in Roswell. They were at Big Springs, Texas.
Right.
And somebody had been cashing dud checks, and they were looking for this fella. And he'd been caught, put in jail in Roswell. So they made arrangements to go and collect him in person. So him and his sheriff set off to Roswell. And he says, on our way in there, we heard about something on the police radio. And we managed to find the location. And there in the desert is the military. They're lifting this thing out of a little canyon. There's these creatures. They were there for a matter of minutes before they were politely but firmly told to go away. They went and got the prisoner, took him back, and that was the end of it. And so we published this story. And first of all, we got a nephew of the late deputy come forward. He says, he never told me this story, but he was straight as a die, was my uncle. He came out of the military after the war, went straight into the police force and spent his whole life in it. He says, but have you spoken to his son? I said, no, didn't know he had one. So we got hold of his son. My colleague, Dr. Irina Scott, interviewed him. And he said, my father told me about this back in the 1950s. And she said, well, how do you know it was the 1950s? She said, well, we moved house. I don't know which year it was in the 50s, but it was a big thing moving house. Now, back in the 1950s, Paul, Roswell had been dead and gone. It wasn't on the television. It wasn't in books and newspapers. Didn't resurrect itself again until the late 1970s. So the old boy couldn't have seen it on television or read about it anywhere.
No, but so it's pointing to real deal, really, isn't it?
Yeah. So it's there. It's in the book. Now, when we talk about aliens and cover-ups, people will tell you, certainly the main Roswell researchers, that it was a vehicles from another world with its occupants. Some say 2, some say 3, some say 4, but some of them died instantly. One may have lived for a short while thereafter. And straight away, there was a cover-up put in place. It became known eventually. Stanton Friedman coined a phrase, cosmic Watergate. How the hell why would you do that, Paul?
I don't know.
President Truman was in charge at the time.
Yeah.
This was the man who gave the go-ahead to drop the atomic bombs on Japan, which he didn't know about because he was only the vice. He was only the second in command, wasn't he? He was the vice president.
Right.
And his boss died, and he became president. And they had to brief him then on the atomic bomb. And he did not bat an eyelid, Paul. No. So my argument is, why would somebody like President Truman want to cover up first contact? And if it was covered up, then where's the paperwork? They'd have people studying it, Paul.
You'd have thought some people from way back then
Yeah.
would have left information that we're going to get out to Joe.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of witnesses to the events, and I talked about confabulation earlier on. I think that comes into play a lot. But there's not a even Marcel Senior, who was the guy who went out there and brought wreckage back and showed his son. They found it. It's not a diary. It's like a journal from that time. And he didn't write it in his journal. There's no mention of it.
No.
There's not some American Air Force guy writing home to his family saying, "You never guess what happened here."
It's in a letter. Yeah,
I mean, there's nothing.
Talk on base that they retrieved a flying saucer.
Yeah, there is nothing. And then we look at during the war. So
where does that leave you then? So where does that leave you when you found this new witness?
Well, let me just finish this bit off.
Go on.
During the war, the biggest and secret project ever was the Manhattan Project, to build the atomic bomb. Originally designed to drop it on Germany, by the way, but the Germans surrendered before it was ready. So unfortunately, it was the Japanese that got it. But even with all the security and everything they went through, they built a town in the desert, Paul. It was leaked. The news got out, and it was leaked to the Russians. And it was a British scientist that leaked it. But there you go. But here we have with Roswell, and there's nothing. Zilch, just rumours and stories. So with the old boy, Forgus,
you don't know.
I don't know. I don't know. I'm not going into too many details because I want people to buy the book and read it themselves and then reach their own conclusion. This is how we came across it. I didn't find it. I spoke to one of the siblings of this lady. He owned it. He was actually living in New Mexico on a big ranch, and he confirmed that that's how we found it. We had no idea what this is.
All right.
Sadly, the guy who run the film company passed away, so the company folded with him, so it was never made into a movie. But what it does show, Paul, once again, what is lying around out there that we're not aware of.
Information that's still out there, yeah.
Yeah, this lady had passed away and it's in her filing cabinet.
Well, hopefully there'll be some more to come then, Philip, of one way or another. Listen, we're nearly there with you, Philip.
Right.
But I don't know whether you have time, briefly, to touch on June Rice, 1956.
Yeah, June came to Beaufort, I believe. And I was working with Beaufort at the time, or working for them. And I remember going to meet her and speak to her. She was, a senior person by the time I got to her. And she told us about this encounter. I think she'd been out with a friend that night.
Yeah, this Filey, that's why I'm interested,
Yeah, I don't think they'd been to a local place, and she was just walking home when this encounter happened. And June was like many people, Paul. Yes, it scared her, but it was more than scary. It was, again, I wouldn't say puzzled. I would say, what the hell is this? She's just an ordinary young lady, on a night out when this happened, not interested in this subject. It's back in the 1950s when you didn't see a lot of this on the TV and newspapers and books and what have you. And she was just I think she was totally bewildered by it. That's the word I've been looking for. Not just puzzled, but totally bewildered by it. And I've spoken to a number of people like that. And yes, the experience itself was totally baffling, but they're bewildered about, well, why did it happen to me?
Yeah.
Why, had I gone down another street that night and taken a different route home, would it still have happened to me? And they came to people like us, Paul, looking for answers simply because they couldn't find them themselves. And that case is in Without Consent, by the way. So there's another reason to buy that book.
Yeah, absolutely.
And she was a lovely lady. I do remember her. It's long since gone now, I believe. But an interesting case, irrespective, Paul.
Well, irrespective of anything, Philip, you were going to give us an hour of your time tonight. You've given us an hour and a half, and I thank you for that. And I'm sure everybody in chat thinks the same. I'm going to hang around for another half an hour, but I think we've wound it up with you, Philip, have we?
Yeah, thank you very much, Paul. I do appreciate it. I hope that, some people treat themselves to the book. And if they do, I'd be delighted to hear from them. Like we said, all typos are courtesy of me. So I can't blame anybody else. Well, I could. It's that Chris Evers. He were on here earlier. I think it's his fault. We'll blame him for it anyway.
We'll blame Chris Evers. But all your work, or a lot of the work, is the books are available on Amazon.
Absolutely, mate.
Absolutely. Well, Philip, thank you. And we'll no doubt we'll see you again in future. And I'm glad you're feeling a little bit better.
Thank you, mate. You take
You're
care.
welcome. Right. Take care, mate. Bye-bye. Okay, guys, you've just got me now for half an hour. So I do apologise because I can see questions here that were for Philip, such as that one, and loads more. So I don't know whether we're even going to get to questions for Paul. Let me just bear with me. Let me just run down a minute. Probably not. Let's have a look. Just give me one sec, guys. I've got to go down quite a lot, and appreciated, Susan. Let's have a look. As I say, Philip, have you seen a UFO yourself? He has, but we didn't get to that, guys. Military person, there's loads for Philip here, guys. So it's not apologies. We've just been on with other stuff, but it's great to have Philip on show and be able to share a few things. So what's been happening? We've still been going to our usual haunt and hoping to catch or experience something. Like we said before, it's been a little bit flat, but it won't deter us. And I've had a few reports come in. We shared some last week, didn't we? And I've had a few more. So I'm just going down here, guys, because I'm just hoping, and it looks like I'm had a look, that there's some questions for me. Not because I haven't got out to talk about. I've got some things lined up, but just bear with me. If I don't want to let you down. We've got some stuff for Wolflands. Which experience? Let's have a look here. It's not really for me, this. I suppose it's for everybody. So it's Michael Pennock. I spoke to Michael today, and that's quite by chance there, Michael. And I was going to ring you back this afternoon, and I haven't done it, but we'll have a natter no doubt tomorrow or in week. Evidence pending. Michael's channel. So let's give it a plug, guys, and jump over onto it and have a look and give him some support. Subscribe to his channel. Just like I always say with Josh Turner's Paranormal Roundtable. Absolutely. If you want somebody who can talk and interest you, Michael Pennock can do it. And likewise, Josh Turner. I won't say talk for England because he's American, but you'll get absolutely amazing information from both people. Right. Which experience have you witnessed or investigated that you say influenced your research the most? I'm assuming this were aimed at Philip, but he's not here. But which experience? I think I'm just been shaped by my own experiences. If we just aim that at me, Michael, and I'm hoping, or I really hope, that I have not become so biased in my opinions that I think that what happened to me is the only thing, and it's got to be that way, or it's never going to happen. If anybody else says that they've had an experience, because I've heard people talk like this, and they've told us what's happened, and genuinely something probably has happened to that individual or that group of people. And then when they listen to other people describing what they've experienced or what they believe, they just can't handle it because their way is the only way. So I would have said my own experience have influenced me more than anything. They've definitely put me on path that I'm on today, and so invested in this subject. And I'm invested in helping other people as much as myself, really, because it helps me as well. But there's nothing better than, which I touched on earlier, an amazing witness account that comes through, first-hand witness account, and you spend time face-to-face with that individual and they tell you all about it and they speak to you 3, 4, 5 times, even many times more in some instances, and you meet up with them and story don't change. But then you start finding other cases from same area, from same of the same type of thing seen, and you start building that picture, and suddenly that witness who stood alone, he feels much more sort of vindicated and a lot more confident in his own skin and in the words that he's been speaking. That's what I like to do. And Michael's experiences are profound. The guy who's asked the question, and as interesting as any. But I'll just keep rolling down. Let's have a look. This is hi, Paul and Philip. This is from Martin. Do you believe that non-human entities live amongst us in our daily lives? I know, Philip, you know, we didn't kind of get an answer on that one, but I don't particularly think that these things are from outer space. They could be living below ground, below sea. I don't know. I think it's clear that whatever it is that's interacting with us, you know, the human race, it's here. Whether it's traveling from far-flung galaxies and found some other way to, I don't know, crack physics. But the main thing for me, as somebody who's looking into this, is to just acknowledge that whatever way it's coming, it's here. It's working amongst us and working with, you know, within communities, within sort of areas. Why such a concentrated geographical area? Why does that occur? That's an interesting one, isn't it, guys? Why certain areas produce a rich concentration of unexplained phenomena over other areas where it becomes flat, or why the phenomena moves from area to area at times. You know, we were researching on the Wolds in the early 2000s, which is the East Yorkshire Wolds and up on the moors, and it seemed to go flat, but it were happening on the coast. Maybe things have fluctuated and things are happening on the Wolds again. I don't know. But do they live amongst us? Do they walk amongst us? Maybe. I spoke to a lady years ago who claimed that she'd met an alien of all places on the platform at Doncaster train station. I think I've told this story before, but she knew. She looked at this individual it sounds like a man in black, to be honest with you. Long, dark, Crombie type coat, fedora type hat, pale skin, and began looking at him and studying him and thinking, God, this guy looks different. He's unusual. And she claims he started to speak to her in her mind. And she wasn't having an audible conversation. She was answering him in her mind. And they got on the train and had a conversation. How does that work? Is that what we'd term as an alien? You know, I mean, one man's alien, as they say. I really don't know, but it's fascinating, isn't it? So let's just move down a bit, and we'll because I have a tip in that all of these questions. I'll throw this up anyway. Well, no, I won't, because it's just for Philip. That's the trouble, in it, when you get talking. But I can't go past the questions, guys. Otherwise, you know, we don't get on with in same method, do we? In regards to the changing shape of UFOs, our own transportation technology develops and changes over time. So why can't alien technology evolve and develop also? That's a good point. But do you think, in grand scheme of things, the length of time, 1940s, say, to present day, is not really a massive amount of time. We've advanced rapidly since those times. But if these beings were traveling about in craft, should we say, that could go below the oceans of the world and appear from the oceans of the world, go from standstill to lightning speed in the blink of an eye, I'm not sure that they would have changed. I really don't know. I mean, people are still seeing flying triangles today, and there's a lot of people that say that's military tech or some kind of man-made tech. But I always use the example from John Hansen, and he's got records 1901 of people seeing flying triangles. Do we go with the other notion, or is it too fanciful that as we've developed, and this doesn't really apply to what you're saying here, 39, but as we've developed, and we're thinking of new things, the shape of the UFO is changing as we're developing, as the human race is advancing. I really don't know. I mean, that might be more in Philip Mantle's sphere than now, when we talk about the tic-tac shaped UFOs, and it's just perception. It's a difficult one, isn't it, guys? Let's just go down here a little bit. And Jan and Andrew, glass tunnel. Right, let's have a look. The glass tunnel. I know a 15-year-old girl experienced one described to her. The other examples on YouTube. A portal, I think so. So what Jan and Andrew are talking about here, I think they're referring, a lovely lady contacted me called Sally. I met up with Sally and her husband at a conference, and they visited Bempton, probably 4 or 5 years ago now. I think they come back, you know, periodically anyway. And they both experienced just walking up the path. They weren't in any really remote place. They were just walking up the path, I think, towards the visitor centre from the cliffs. and they both realized that everything, bear in mind it's a seabird sanctuary, you know, it's a colony, should I say. They're just incessant in the daytime. All you can hear is seabirds. Everything just went deadly quiet, deadly still, and as though they were in a bubble, as though they were in a glass tunnel, and they were walking along and they seemed to walk out of it. They spoke about it when they'd come out of it. They went back to see if they could experience it. Weren't there again. Everything was as normal. And I find that fascinating. Likewise, we talked about Gaz in Wolflands, who he said it was like somebody had put a stop on the world, paused the world. I think that's what Gaz's analogy were. Well, we know that the phenomena, as we've said, I've said it earlier tonight, can't stop the sea. Surely it's not got that ability. So it's something that it's an environment that's been placed around the individual, or it's something that's happening within the mind of the individual where everything else is blanked out because you're that focused on the phenomena that you perceive coming towards you, or the threat that you perceive coming towards you. And it's not always a threat, is it? Because as I've just said, Sally experienced it and they didn't feel threatened. They didn't feel nervous. They were just aware that everything had gone quiet. Christmas 1970 into 1971, which I wrote about. Let's give the book a plug, shall we? Which I wrote about in Night People. When we saw the two rabbits and the guinea pig and then the aliens, which is the craziest thing to say. I realize that. However, I write in that book that I can remember, because I weren't very vocal, I was only a little boy, but I can remember my mum and dad talking to each other. And it was like they were talking to each other through tubes. You ever tried talking? You will have done, won't you? Through them big smarty tubes or anything like that, and listening to your voice, which is different. It were like they were miles apart, yet they were together. You know, we were all no more than 6 foot apart, and not even that. There's 3 people walking, yet the voices seemed miles apart. And that, as a little boy, I wouldn't have recognised that as this disjointed reality, this what Jenny Randall's coined the Oz factor, but I still noted that as a little boy, I noted that they sounded like they were miles apart. Their voices sounded like they were a long way away from each other, as though they were talking into tubes. So I get where you are with that, Jan and Andrew. Let's just go down a little bit. Thanks for all support tonight, guys. Really appreciate it. We've got loads of questions here still for Philip, so I'm just racing down them. And let's have a look. And just have a look here. The Yorkie 007. Whitwell on the Hill, 2010, weird thunderstorm occurred. It started about 8 o'clock. The sky lit up with sheet lightning. After the flash, there was a perfect circle of darkness that was visible. That's incredible, isn't it? You know, once again, not forced to be anything paranormal. It could be some kind of weather-related phenomenon, and there might be somebody out there who'll tell us what that is. Although I dare say that you've looked into what it could be as well, Yorkie. I don't know, but what a thing to see. And I think about the times we've been as a collective on the cliff tops, and I'm not sure if it's the psionics cameras that can pick this up, because there's things that's happened up there where I've gone on one occasion, and I've still not put it onto YouTube because Fortian, who's brilliant with bits of footage and slowing them down and finding quirky things, who's in chat now on the footage, has done a bit of work on it for me. And I'm just scanning around in the darkness, and I go, oh, they were a little flash of light then. I hope and I actually say I hope cameras picked it up. It's obviously picked it up because I'm looking in camera, but I say it. When it's broken down, I've actually been in a whiteout, just for one frame or of this bit of footage. And we've had other occasions like that. Linny got one, and then I got another one. And I noted that the guys from what we called the Hummonby incident, 1996, 7 and 8, they used to talk about when they drove back from that warehouse sometimes during the early hours of the morning, sometimes late at night, because it was a secondary job that they did. They'd be driving home, and suddenly, just for 1 second, one blink of an eye, not even a second, everything just lit up and everything was daylight for as far as the eye could see. What kind of power, what kind of energy could produce that effect? Don't you find that fascinating? No thunderstorms. I mean, you're talking about a thunderstorm here, Yorkie, but it's still a fascinating thing. A guy contacted me early this year or late last year, and I've interviewed him. We've done the recording, but his internet were poor, so I'm going to have to get back to him. There were too many things that I've got to do in edit, to breaks and things, to do it justice. And he were on a course, and I think it were in the centre of Leeds. And if you're listening to this, just give us a thumbs up. If not, I will be in touch in the next few weeks, because it's too good a story, even though it were just the blink of an eye. He said suddenly he realised, because it's a lovely bright day, it became night. Literally, it became night for just the blink of an eye. And I'm not talking about the lights went off in the building on a bright day. He said everywhere just became nighttime. A few people on the course noticed it, but everybody else didn't. You know, so that's an interesting one, and I want to sort of rekindle that story, but say, because we have done the interview, but they were just too much to do in edit with poor internet connection. So these things, I think, Yorkie, are just as interesting. I mean, even if there's a natural explanation, they've still got to be interesting if you've got an inquiring mind. And let's face it, everybody within Truth Proof are interested in things of an unusual nature, and that's what that is. Let's have a look. Let's just keep going down. I would do a little story, I think, if I can't find out that's relevant for you. Let's just do this. Okay, so we've got, this is somebody that's contacted me just with information, and you've heard Philip talk about the June rice. He didn't go into great detail about it, but it were an alien abduction type scenario in Filey, which is probably, what is it, 8 miles from where I'm sat now. So it interests me. And I've got an email that I was sent to you. Strangeness in Filey Brigg is what I've called it. And this is a guy that used to live in Filey. Hi, Paul. Only just found your channel. I used to live in Filey, 1996 to 2005. Then in Burton Fleming, before moving to Calgary in 2005. So Burton Fleming's an interesting place, guys. Absolutely fascinating. Lots of UFOs reported around that area. Just a little village just on Wolds, close to Willie Howe, close to the burial mound of Willie Howe. Right. This is just information. That's been put out there to me. This, I used to talk and drink with the older fishermen in and around the town of Filey and Hummonby. The Hummonby incident, okay? And these people, you know, there'll be people that probably won't share much information. There's people on Bridlington Harbour who've got information about UFO-related events, not sightings, I mean proper events. Maybe even watching this, because I know that these people are interested, but they just talk about it within their little communities or their groups of people, a bit like mining communities. They're pretty close-knit, and you can't always get that information. Right, they used to talk and drink around Filey and Hummonby, and they would talk about strange coloured lights emanating from the Flamborough Head area, both on top of the headland and strange whirring and screeching noises below. So these are fishermen that are experiencing this. So they're out at sea, probably in their little fishing boats, the cobbles, not be that far out, most of them, if they're after crabs and lobster. Right, apparently during sea frets, so if anybody's not familiar with a sea fret, it's a large bank of fog that comes in from the sea. And it's an incredible thing to see, quite honestly, because you can see it out at sea, and within minutes the land is you're just looking at grey. There's nothing. You can't only see a few feet in front of you, if that. So they're an incredible thing. But anyhow, apparently during sea frets, massive blue and purple lights were seen, almost heading straight at you, coming straight towards them, but coming from the North Sea, and then receding back into the ocean after a couple of minutes. I've heard of this, you know. I have heard of this, but I want more information on it. So this is only the second time I've heard of it. So I know that there's people out there, because if it's a natural phenomenon, or even if it's not, and it's something totally unknown, a true unknown, we're going to hear more about it, aren't we, guys? Or there's got to be more information out there about it. So if I've just sort of ticked a box for somebody who knows about some of this, get in touch. We don't have to use your name. Then receding back to the ocean a couple of minutes, after a couple of minutes, which is actually a long time to stand looking at them. And, you know, I'll touch on, I think they call him Martin I'll not say his surname because I'm not sure. I can't remember now if I've got permission to use his surname. But he used to walk 2 Labrador retrievers at Bempton many years ago. He'd take his dogs down, and the gate in the bottom corner of the car park, there's a double gate, or a big gate anyway, that opens to let tractors through or whatever. That were open. The public could just walk down into that field. So we're going back quite a few years, and he used to just take his dogs down. He said it were a lovely day. He says, and he were observing an owl just skimming about, looking for its next meal, no doubt. And his dogs was milling around, just doing what dogs do. And he looked down the cliffs, and I'm assuming from his. I spent time with this guy. I didn't walk on cliffs with him. I actually met him in a pub, and we talked about it, if I'm being truthful. And then I met him at the car park because he weren't in good health, and we talked about it from the gate where he'd entered and gone on into the field. So I know that it's around the area where we do a lot of observations. He said, and he noticed on the cliff top path a mushroom-shaped light about the size of a single-decker bus. He says, and it was hung over the cliffs. And he's down in the field now. He's not got to walk through it though. Thank God. You know, I didn't have to do that, because that all has troubled him. If he'd have been at the other side of it, what would I have done, kind of thing. He said, so I'm looking at this light, I'm perplexed. He said, about the size of a single-decker bus, it's hung over the cliffs, it's hung over the path, and it's going onto the land. He says, and within this cloud of light, there's lots and lots of different lights, all seemingly punching out and hitting this wall of cloud, but not coming any further, not emanating any further. And he watched this for a while. His dogs didn't seem interested at all. Then he just became a little bit perturbed by what he was looking at, and decided to turn and back up the field through the gate. And that was his story, basically. It probably isn't exactly the same as the strange lights that the guys from Filey saw. I know one of our team who's in here now, he's seen something very similar, walking along Cliff Lane. And we're probably going back 20 years. If you're in here, I might not even get to your answer, but just put 20 or 15, whatever you want to put it, unless you don't want to. But he's walking along Cliff Lane, looks over towards the old RAF base and the land surrounding it, and sees a bubble of blue light on the field. Perfectly normal morning, no sea frets, no fog, just like the night that this guy saw it hung over the cliff. So I think we've got a similar type of phenomena there. What interests me, or what I'll always wonder, I guess I'm never going to know unless we see something like that, and then I don't think I'd be brave enough to walk up to it, is what's inside that mist? What's creating that life force that's punching out with all these different coloured lights? You know, and is it a regular occurring phenomenon? And if you were walking those cliff tops and you had to pass through it, would you? You know, what happened to it? And this guy just turned and went home. So what happened to that light? I know that the guy I'm talking about, and he knows who it is, we used to work together 30 years ago. And but neither of us ever said we'd got an interest in unexplained. Yeah. As I used to meet him when I used to be going up onto the cliff tops at 4:30 or 5 in the morning, and he'd be walking his dog, and we'd strike up a conversation. I'd pass in car and stop because we'd got that association from probably 35 years ago. I'm not sure, it's at least 30 years ago. So interesting. So he'd seen the blue light as well. I don't want to bore you with that. Let's have a look. So right, so that's the light on the cliff top. And then this guy says, regarding Filey Brigg, I have personally seen lights hovering both above the brig and lower down on the rocks, then seemingly moving rapidly out to sea. That's fascinating, isn't it? Because I've had reports from anglers who've been fishing off the cliff tops at Filey and off Filey Brigg, claim to have seen lights below the surface of the water. We've managed to film lights below the surface of the water. I think I managed to film twice. I might have got 3 times. I'm not sure. I sent Chris Turner some of it tonight funnily enough, for our future documentary. And but to see them up close and personal, I mean, these guys, but it sounds of it, seen them a lot closer. I spoke to some anglers who were fishing off the beach at Filey, who claimed that there were lights under the water in between where they were fishing, where they'd cast out, and the beach, you know, and so wherever that line and the weight had landed, they're seeing lights under the water. Could some of this be bioluminescence? I wouldn't rule that out, you know. Some of it could have been like marine bioluminescence. There's a great guy, Paul Mortz, who takes film and images of the aurora, and he's very interested in the bioluminescence, and he'll message me when there's a potentially it might show itself in UK waters, and he asked me to, you know, will you get in touch if you manage to see it off Bempton or wherever you are? And he knows I always would, and he's took some footage of it, but it only became excited and agitated on the shoreline as the waves were breaking, and it just looked like this beautiful iridescent blue, turquoise blue color that were just lighting up like a neon light. So have we filmed bioluminescence? I don't know. I'm not certain. To me, it was circular, and it went out to sea, and then it came back. So we got something. So anyway, let's have a look. Fishermen are notoriously hard to talk to, but I have heard of strange lights and changes in atmospheric pressure around the end of Filey Brigg and Car Naz. These are all locations around Filey Brigg. So similar stories. I have also heard similar stories from Flamborough, Bempton, and Sowerby. So we're in the same geographical area, aren't we, guys? Let's face it. I've also heard many views on the magnetic pull or rotation out there I have also heard many views on a magnetic pull or rotation out there that can cause whirlpools and a natural phenomena or another worldly shroud hiding the entrance to a portal. Yeah, a bit of poetic license there, because we don't know, do we? But it's interesting. These people are real and very genuine. These are not scary stories, and often these men are very reluctant to talk, as I was seen as an outsider until I had lived there for 5 years. So it's interesting, isn't it? This is another one. I personally got lost time in thick fog around Flamborough. It's not really, it would be hard to get lost in Flamborough. You know, there's only one way in and one way out. You know, so this is interesting for me. Whilst in my Land Rover in the area, an area that I knew very well, and I was within view of the lighthouse. It was a very odd experience, and one to this day I still cannot explain. I also remember the inside of the vehicle being very damp and wet. In fact, even though all the windows and the sunroof were fully closed. It's interesting. So let's just see whether we've got any questions now, guys. If there's out relating to me, because we're just about there, aren't we? And it's been brilliant. It's been great because I haven't had to do anything, have I? Let's face it. And you must have liked Philip, because my numbers have dropped now he's gone. Right. Let's have a look. Paul, when are you planning? Ben Dewey. Well, Mark Anderson, I think you're going to come with us, Mark, aren't you? And we've got to get it. We've got to get it planned. I'm not sure whether Chris will be able to go, but yeah, we have to get that planned. It'll be with Chris Meek, and because obviously he knows the route. And yeah, it's something I really want to do. I think Lee doing moderating. I think Lee's wanting to go as well. But see, Blue Shift Rob's in. Let's have a look, guys. Paul, right. Let's have a look. Paul, do you have any recent werewolf reports you can tell us about? I think I spoke to you guys. Last week I met two men who saw something highly unusual. I mean, when we say werewolf, you know, what are we dealing with? You know, because I always think to myself, it sounds so ridiculous. And that is not to discredit the witness. It's just that when you realize the subject matter you're talking about and what you're describing, essentially it's something from an horror film, isn't it? But there's too many people reporting it for me to deny it, deny it a place here. Because last week, guys, I went into Danesdyke. It's the first time I've been in for quite a while. Me and the Bobster, we had a little trip in. And I initially went in to talk about a report that had been sent by a lady who'd seen it as an 8-year, claimed to have seen something very similar to what Michael saw. If you remember, Michael saw this thing walking towards the first kiosk in Danesdyke on a beautiful 11 o'clock morning. And this thing allegedly transformed. And, you know, Michael's as straight as a die. I just can't see that he's not telling me the truth about what he saw. But what I like now is that other people are coming forward. And there's a lady contacted me that claims she saw just that as an 8-year-old girl. So I went to Danesdyke to talk about it. And I was going to make a little YouTube film. But when I got there, I realized that there were lots of accounts of strangeness. There were lots of not just that one and Michael's. So I touched on every one of them briefly, and I walked up the steps and I talked about the growl on the woman's shoulders. I talked about the security guard working on the green at the golf course back in the early 2000s, I think it was, that heard this thing when he'd got his Staffordshire Bull Terrier dogs with him, that let out this ungodly roar, he said, that sounded like a sonic boom going off in his chest. I talked about the ones that were seen on the road by the guy with the invalid scooter, the one on the same bit of road, the same location by the guy coming home on nights from Bessingby, the one on the same bit of road where the guy waiting at the bus stop claimed it came up and put its head through the fence, this thing that looked half human, half dog. I think that it's brilliant to put these together, not just because I'm putting them together. You guys can do this as well. If you've had a sighting of your own, you've seen something profound that's really sort of struck a chord with you, then likewise, throat net a little bit wider and see if you can find other reports from the area. Not necessarily on same day or same month or same year, but if you can find other reports, then you're just adding a little bit more strength to the witness that's been bold enough to come out and share information with you. But so, other werewolf reports to talk about. I may have talked about it last week, or I might have done it on early morning one. I'm not sure, but I went and met two guys in Bridlington town. And one of them's going to have a drive with me to location, and he was between Thorpe Hall and Rudston, and he's taking his friend who was with him that evening. He's taking him home. He lived in Rudston, and just before they get into the village, this thing crosses over the road, as big as a cow, as big as a horse. Remember, they allowed me to record them. So we've got that recording to do. But if I managed to get out there with one of these men, and when we do the route, this will be even better to listen to. And what did it look like? It looked like a huge hound, a huge wolf, but more shaped like a bear. He said it had a dog's head. All they could see were dark brown or black. It was, very dark coloured. It turned and looked at them as they're driving towards it. It had got blood red eyes, and it was straight over the road. One of the witnesses I spoke to that night that afternoon, said that he knows someone else who's seen it. And it all ties in. We've got Michael, and I don't mean Michael who saw the one in Danes Dyke. We've got Michael who lives in the village of Burton Fleming, who was on his electric bike travelling to Bridlington. And he's probably half a mile from where these two men that I spoke to saw their creature, whatever it was. He's driving towards Bridlington, and this thing runs across a field. And he's done a detailed drawing of it and gave us his account for that'll be in the new Wolflands documentary. Brilliant witness, and a career that's involved engineering, meaning he's pretty accurate and on point with sizes and what he sees and what he perceives. Not that these other guys weren't. So that's fascinating as it is. So new reports coming in. I have to shake my head every time I hear the word werewolf, because it's so far out of everybody's comfort zone, isn't it, guys? Years and years ago, people would talk about UFOs. Yeah, obviously, people still roll their eyes and think, oh, UFOs, it's all a load of rubbish. There's nothing visiting us. There's nothing with us. But there's a lot more people accepting of the fact that there's something very real to the subject and the phenomena. Probably the most difficult part of unexplained phenomena for people to bend their heads around are things like these werewolf reports, dogman reports, Bigfoot reports, because it just doesn't fit into anything that we truly could believe. However, I think by highlighting them, by concentrating on areas or showing that there's a concentrated group of sightings around areas that go back decades and decades. I mean, when we made Wolflands, and we got into the Forge Valley, it were a wealth of information regarding that kind of creature, that kind of entity, that kind of whatever it is, paranormal entity, if you like, because I don't know what they are. So there's a reality to it, guys. As much as I shake my head and think, God, I can't believe this, there's a reality to it. And the reality tonight, guys, is that we've got 4 minutes past 9. Philip Mantle's made it really easy for me tonight. And I probably will do another early morning one, but I'm not going to set it in stone. Sometime next week, maybe Thursday or Friday. And we'll definitely be doing a Sunday one. Next Sunday, we'll be here to talk. I've got a pile of reports ready to go through to share with you guys. And in the meantime, if you've got any you want to share, I know a lady's contacted me from Driffield as well, and I feel a little bit bad because I did make arrangements to contact her and I haven't done, so I will be doing that, as well as all other reports. I just got to, it's hard to keep on top of them, guys, but that's what I'll be doing. So I'm going to say good night. Thanks for support. Thanks for staying with us. One last thing that I haven't said, if you're new to the channel or if you haven't done it already, give us a like and subscribe. Hype as well if you like, and it just shows a little bit of support because we've sat here for 2 hours, hopefully entertained you a little bit. And on that note, I'm going to say good night. Thank you very much, guys, and thanks Lee and Gemma for doing the moderating. Bye. Is this an adventure or what? We don't need unexplained phenomena. I hope you guys are enjoying this journey we're taking you on. I know you come expecting to hear about big cats, cryptids, UFOs. We will touch on some of that, but I think it's worth sharing some of this for you, don't you? There's only 2 living souls up here today.
Because I can see it in my mind, I can see it in my head what I saw, but I can't describe.
Our eyes was closed, like a brightish light in my face, and I just felt paralysed.
Someone said there's something out there, so we had a look. It looked like a walnut. That's the only way I can describe it.
It was like it had loads of tiny little windows all over it, and it had lights in those windows, but not a light that illuminates.
Anyway, we were ushered into this lounge. This fella come in, he said, whatever you saw was a weather effect.
And everything is deathly silent. There's no sea, there's no wind, there's no night noise, because, you know, there's foxes all over here. There's nothing.